Καλημέρα σας. Συγγνώμη ρε παιδιά που δεν είμαστε μαζί, αλλά τον άλλο χρόνο θα είμαι εκεί. So good morning everybody. I'm sorry I can't be with you. Lots going on back here, but I do promise that I'll do everything I can to be there together next year. And for the most part, I'm sure we're going to be doing things back in the States. And I can't wait to see all of you and talk about the great work that's happening as we bring the Cretan lifestyle to the masses here in America. So today, I want to take you through a little bit of the mega trends that are taking place in this country so you can see how the absolute incredible Cretan lifestyle lines up with where we are in the US, particularly with consumers, as they really are struggling these days. When you think about this, I want you to understand this is something I start all my presentations with. Right now in this country and all around the world, we live with what's called the VUCA world. VUCA is something that goes back to the US military, but VUCA is volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. All those things traditionally happen individually. They don't necessarily all happen at once. And when they all happen at once, everything goes crazy. You can't make any decisions. You don't understand what's taking place in front of you because there's just too much taking place that's taking you away from the things you traditionally have to deal with to get through, some things that might be ambiguity is involved. And then maybe things are complex, but they're not complex with ambiguity, and they're certainly not volatile complex with ambiguity. So as these things come together, they create this state of chaos. Now, the secret is VUCA solves VUCA, and I'll tell you what that means at the end when we wrap this up. But as it relates to what's happening here in the US, there's a global implication here. So we can't lose the fact that the geopolitics of the situation and technology have come together to influence demand and supply. And then all of this impacts supply chains, it impacts consumers, it impacts how we do business. You think about demand influences population growth, you think about protein demand in underdeveloped countries, you think about nutrition, which is a very big part of what everybody's dealing with in their day-to-day life. You think about the social implications around the world. Not only is there a war and the world is divided on all sorts of things, but there's also social constraints that are taking place. All these influences have a lot to do with consumer demand and how consumers react to this. And you'll find out that living in this kind of an environment, again, creates this VUCA notion of how am I going to get through it? I don't know what I'm going to do. How am I going to get through it? Now, on the other side of it, the business side of it, there are supply constraints when you think about energy, you think about the social implications with governments, you think about land and water use, you think about climate change. This is the whole ESG side of what goes on in our world today. And we're putting tremendous constraints where we get our existence. All those have to do, again, with how consumers are reacting to their environments. Throw in the social activism. There's, Me Too, Black Lives Matter, social justice, gun control now, Stop Asia Hate, the wars, what's going on not only in Ukraine, now in the Middle East. That's one side of it. The economic uncertainty here in the United States continues to also be debated. Is it a recession? Is it not a recession? Why is the consumer still spending money when they don't have any money? They've run out of cash. And then the dynamics with technology, Internet of Things and ChatGPT and AI and price increases. And there's just, again, this myriad of complexity that drives everybody's life. And you're saying, Phil, what's that got to do with the Cretan lifestyle? Well, where you are, I'm sure you're not dealing with any of that right now. You're getting ready for a beautiful Thursday, admiring the landscape, taking a big, deep breath. You probably had a phenomenal meal and your mind is very open and relaxed. So think about that versus this crazy world everybody else is living in. All right, don't laugh. I see you laughing. The reality is, though, consumers here in America have always been transitioning with their food, with their lifestyle. It used to be food was culture. It was Greek food. It was, Japanese food. It was Italian food. There was always a Mediterranean diet. There was always a Mediterranean influence in food. There was, what happened with the things from Asia. There's all sorts of African cuisine. It was natural and it had to do with culture. But it also started to evolve a couple of years back with diets, keto, vegetarian, paleo, gluten-free, vegan. All these dietary restraints started to cause all sorts of problems because now it was taking a medical impact and causing all sorts of medical issues when you think about consumers, their restricted diets, and how they were reacting to the food they were taking. The interesting thing about consumers, their priorities have shifted. You don't hear as much about low salt, low sugar, low sodium. You don't hear about all that right now. Right now, we're dealing with the social determinants of health. And it's like, like, what are you talking about, Phil? What is that thing? What? People are anxious. People are economically unstable. People have problems socially interacting with one with another. You know, back in the day as I was growing up, if you came home and said, I'm a little depressed and I don't know, I'm lonely, my father would go crazy. And he's from Cretan, my family's from Crete. So you can only imagine the kind of disciplinary environment I lived in that said, hey, get your act together, buddy. What are you talking about? You're lonely. Here in the United States, again, this is an implication of lifestyles, mega trend, get ready for it. Mental health, number one, diversity, equity, inclusion, number two, sustainability, the representation of the disabled and the economic conditions are forcing consumers to think about their life, their lifestyles differently. This is very important to start to think about. This chart too, also, you might not be able to see it, but it talks about how this affects Gen Z, millennials, baby boomers. If you think about Gen X, each one of these demographics have a different approach or an impact that's causing them mental health issues. From apnea, no sleep, from being lonely, from having pressure from social media. What are you kidding me? You got pressure from social media. What, are you playing too many games? These things are real. They're not to be taken lightly. And this is affecting consumers' mindset, and it's affecting their lives. And if you look through, you can see several of these things, particularly loneliness, shows up everywhere. The sleep apnea piece shows up everywhere in different levels of priority. So we have to start to take those things into consideration as we talk about the lifestyle, the shift in not just the food, not just the environment, but the way we physically feel and how our relationships impact the shift in priorities. Very important when we're talking to consumers. What's the other big thing that's happening? This is an amazing chart. 1990 on the left, 2018 on the right. It's America and the obesity problem that we have as a nation. Obesity coming through not just from food, doesn't have as much to do as food. There are elements that are combined together that cause some of these problems. You can see it was 0 to 9, less than 10% in the light blue areas, and even in the darker blue areas in the mountain region in 1990. Oh my gosh, if you were living in Idaho and you were living up in Colorado and you were living in New Mexico, some of these most beautiful areas in America, you were cool. Everything was fine. Body mass index, was not the substantial number that it is today. When you look at 2018, which is still years ago, you can see the significant shift in what's happening with body mass index. And you can see the middle of the country. You can see what's even in the West that was less because you're outdoors. You've got a different environment. You can see the tragic developments in the middle of the country in the South and how America has defined itself because it's obesity, stupid. Yes, it has to do with how you feel about the food, has to do with what you're eating. But again, these are major mega trends that are continuing to accelerate in this country, causing all sorts of problems. Well, guess what? There's an answer, okay? And of course, it's know thyself. It's Greek for food is thy medicine. When you can take a test for less than $100 and it tells you what your problems are and where you need protein and where your fats are, where your carbs are, what your daily balance is required. Now you can start on your own without a doctor, figuring out what your problems are. Can you imagine a lonely person that has not enough sleep, who's got problems with social media and economically stressed, but has enough money to take a kit to tell them that they need to eat more meat or they need to eat more greens? But this is what's happening. This is, again, a component of managing thyself, getting data, understanding who you are, understanding how you're affected by not only the food, the environment around you, and now you're starting to get a picture on how you can solve your own problem. Fascinating, isn't it? Without a doctor. Now, Americans are trying to eat healthy, and you can see through this chart the different demographics. They're trying to eat an active, healthy lifestyle, and they're trying to figure out what's healthy. And there's a willingness to be able to include diet into how they feel, diet into how their well-being is going to take place. And it's fascinating because as much as there's a willingness, there seems to be a lack of, well, it's too expensive. There's not enough time to prep the food. I don't know what I'm doing. I have a lack of knowledge in the kitchen. So the fast nature of everything being quick and instant continues to be a drag on an American consumer. The fact of the matter, though, is they're able and understand the impacts of what's starting to happen, and they're starting to pay attention, which is really important for the work we're doing as we're trying to educate everybody. The majority of Americans say that, eating and having a physical activity are basically what's going to keep them, living longer and healthier. So it's not that they don't know. It's not that they don't understand. It's just that they need help, and they need ways for them to be motivated to be able to live the lifestyle that you're living over there for a couple of days. So think about this. They know it's their eating habits, and they know they need physical exercise. So that's a very important component. Healthy and safe housing conditions is very important, and they understand there's genetics. But think about what's happened to you. It's Thursday morning. You spent at least 2 days there already. You've been through the stresses of travel. You've taken in the deep breath air. You probably had a great dinner last night, and I can guarantee you there was probably some dancing. Zilevo. I'm very jealous. You probably had some nice wine, and now the effects of all this is happening. Do you know why it's starting to happen to you? Because you're in a pareja, you're in a group. You're in a group of other people that want the same kind of thing. So that's the beginning of the next trend we're going to talk about as we think about how consumers are looking for that support mechanism to help them get to what they need. And it's really important because guess who's turning into the big white and diverse keeper of all the people who's going to help everybody. You ever heard this thing in America? I'm from the government and I'm here to help you. Yes. So you got your pareja over there. Over here, we got the federal government that's going to tell us what to do with the regulatory environment. These are all issues that are being addressed in Congress. As much as they're dysfunctional, there's rules and regulations about all these issues that are on this page. They've been evolving the last couple of years. Now, one of the most important things in front of everybody is what's the definition of milk in the new regulatory environment, so consumers can understand what they're taking in. Is plant-based food and plant-based milk milk? Is almond milk milk? Is oat milk milk? You can understand the complexity if you've got some problem with milk. Okay, you got an allergy, or God forbid, you have some type of issue with respect to oat milk or almond milk. They're fighting in Congress over the definition of milk. Milk comes from a bovine, which is an animal that has the ability to produce enzymes to create milk. It doesn't come from plants. It doesn't come from almonds. It doesn't come from all these other things that are being brought into the category to expand the category. And by the way, it's cheaper to buy a gallon of milk than it is to buy a gallon of some fancy flavored oat milk or almond milk. So the government is stepping in. There's also all sorts of regulatory environment activities. And that's important because consumers care about this stuff. Wait, there's more. They're not out of their lives yet. We're going to track the food now. We're going to track where everything is coming from so that you understand that it's good, it's safe, it's not a problem. It's turning the food business upside down here. FASMA 204 is a regulatory traceability rule that's in place. It's about learn, plan, do, and review. And this multi-step activity is being brought into the food industry to enforce dates, organize where product is coming from and understand the true release of food into the consumer, all the way back to the seeds from the farm. So think about this again. You're out in the fields. I don't know if you guys have been out there yet picking fruits or vegetables to eat or shaking down the trees. I think the olive season has come and gone. In this environment, we will need to monitor everything that happens from the minute that olive comes onto the branch to the minute you shook it, to the minute you collected it, to the minute you cleaned it, to the minute you packed it, to the minute you shipped it, to the minute they got it on the ship, to the minute they came here, when it was offloaded, where did it go, who did the distributor, what restaurant did it go to, who ate it. This whole process by the federal government to keep food safe and to be able to trace food, and companies in the U.S. are starting to be ready for this because some of it is starting to come up to be effect, particularly in the school environment in June of next year, 25. 26, it's going to get bigger, wider. So what does that mean? It's a component of, again, these mega trends that are going to help us regulate all this, because this has to do with how do we take care of the food we eat, where does it come from, and then how does it impact us? Again, very important in a production environment, very important to understand the implications of something like this. Wait, there's more. We're not just going to track the food. We're also going to start telling the schools what is nutritious and what they should be serving students. So the entire regulatory environment is being, again, regulated from a nutrition standpoint, and regulatory nutrition regulations will be published for schools. Now, I know some of my friends are there from the university environment, and you should ask them about this and how it's turning them upside down with the work they have to do with the incoming food and what they will put on their menus or not. The huge controversy in this country right now is Lunchables, which is one of my old company's most successful products. Oscar Mayer Foods is one of the most salt-ridden, one of the most ecologically unsound packaging environments you've ever seen, with sugars and sweets and processed foods, and they've allowed this to be on the new children's nutrition requirements in schools. I mean, good luck figuring this thing out, right? Again, the government trying to regulate nutritional impact, particularly at schools and universities. Why? Again, because consumers are confused. They're trying to figure it out on their own, and they need help. They need somebody to tell them what to do. Now, there are some solutions. Here's one. This is an organization that's coming out of the Netherlands. They've taken the food triangle and turned it upside down. If you think they're people from the plant-based industry, you're right. Look at the top, more green. Look at the bottom, less red. Look at what you need to be drinking. Water, 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 water. No more milk. This isn't a bad standard. This isn't something that's not working. It's happening in some of these countries. It's happening in Europe. And the U.S. is starting to adopt to some of these approaches as the government, again, puts out the nutritional environments. But this is something that's really starting to take effect, particularly as consumers are looking for answers and alternatives to how their food intake is making them feel. You know about losing weight. You know about some of the chronic issues that people have, but you're getting help now from academic institutions. My friends from Harvard know this well. This is their recommendation. Look at the top of the left there. I think Dr. Stefanos had something to do with this. Healthy oils. We're going to talk about oils in a minute. You think lei olive oil. Healthy oils on the top. Look at the biggest part of this. Vegetables, whole grains, healthy protein. Look at oil, vegetables, whole grains, and of course, water. Sound familiar? Did you probably have this last night? Did you probably have bigger portions of horta and bigger portions of different grains as you looked at your feast of your meal and you figured out how it was going to work out for you? Does this sound familiar? Going back hundreds of years? Yes, it does. And everybody's talking about it. And that's why it's important we as a community come together and are able to mobilize around some of these very important opportunities that are going to require greater involvement to getting the consumer to understand what's going on. So yes, we can take care of ourselves. We know where to find the answer. Google. Go on the internet. There's the answer. Everything is there for you. Look at this statistic here in the United States. This is health and fitness apps on your phone that you can download. Look at the millions of people doing this and look at the increases. Now, it's stabilized a little bit. You can understand why things took a little bit of a dip in 2021. As much as we were lonely, we were still not able to get outside and do the things we need to do. But the fact of the matter is, this is what was going on and continues to go on as people search for help. This is another trend. It has to do with social media, has to do with technology. You can see also the adoption that soared by 48% year over year once we were in COVID and we were trying to figure out how are we going to get ourselves and keep ourselves motivated and just walking around. No different than what you just did in the Horio, going from one place to the other or walking out in the fields. These guys need an app over here to figure that out. You can see how the influence of technology is starting to kick in and trying to help people. There's an intersection, though, between technology now and what people care about with respect to environmental, social, governance issues, the ESGs of the world. They're more important now than ever. The UN, as most of you know, put out the 17 goals for sustainable development. And each one of these have sub-goals. They have big plans around them. And you can see that some of them have to do with humanity. When you think about no poverty, you can also think about what happens to us in a world where there's zero hunger. And we're taking the responsibility of all this food that we don't know what to do with when we throw it away, and how we can help our fellow man with respect to poverty. We're looking at how we're going to take care of the land, how are we going to take care of the sea, where our food comes from. Consumers here in the States are going crazy, adopting some of this to their own personal relationships, their own personal causes, and the things that they care about the most. It isn't just about climate change. When you think about how some of this works, it's not just about the economics of your own house. It's about the economics of your community. You can see several of these have to do with equity and inclusion, gender equity and inclusion. A lot of this is a component now becoming much more adopted by consumers, which brings us into these huge mega trends, responsibility and sustainability, coming off of technology, coming off of self-care, coming off of our need to focus on ourselves for better mental health. As we lead down this road, you can see how the consumer has really shifted, and you can see how the consumer now is really trying to fight off the appetite with respect to social values and how they continue to make sure sustainability is a big part of what they do. You can see it here by the demographic breakdowns. And then you can also understand that when they go to purchase something and they want to take something in, it's all about online. And the whole online environment, the ability to press a button, and I can probably get something shipped right where you are through Amazon, and it'll, because you're in the hotel, probably take 2 days instead of 1 day. These two enablers are now coming together to fulfill consumers' needs in a way that they've never been met before. They still don't know the answer. They still don't know what makes sense for them. That's why the work that we're doing must be considered as we think about the roadmap to the future. This is something I found very interesting I wanted to share with you. Again, it comes from the European Union. Guess what? Most of the better ideas come from Europe and they circle around. This is what Gen Z thinks about when they think about a healthy food system, things we've already talked about. They want to track their eating habits. They want to have mental health that helps them. They want guidance with their social media. They want much more transparency from the label. They want easy access, just talked about online. They want the ability to be activated and involved and engaged in things that are purposeful to them. This is laid out. It's almost a replica if you put it behind the work that we're doing in a three-dimensional roadmap, this is where the Cretan lifestyle and what we're gathering to talk about is the engine on pushing it through this roadmap to be able to reach generations and generations of folks that really can benefit and understand they will on how they can implement that in their life. They just need a bigger pareja, a bigger group. We can do this. I know we can. So you start thinking about how that works, and we got to leverage technology. Now, here in the United States, back in 1962, we had a television cartoon show that was the #1 show in America on TV when they only had 3 channels, the Jetsons. And they looked at life in 2062, 100 years away, and they leveraged technology. And guess what we're finding out? The Jetsons are true, but it came early. We have flying cars. We have the ability to look at our phone and see each other. We have the ability to Zoom like this, and for me to be with you this morning. We have the ability to have a housekeeper in our home. When you think about the vacuum cleaners and you think about the robotics that are going on, we have the ability to self-medicate ourselves with our doctors. We have the ability to have work from home. All these things that were going on in the Jetsons have come true to life. And those are being leveraged to help consumers get on with their merry life, or they're depressing consumers because there's too much of it. So remember now, technology is where the answer is. And for us to be more progressive and be able to get to all these people, we're going to have to get beyond Alexa and Siri and Google when we were telling them what to do and they were telling us where to find the answer and where to go. Now we're into ChatGPT, and I bet you if I recorded a couple of questions, I would probably have a 10-page thesis on all about the Cretan lifestyle and what I should do. But here it comes, Vision Pro from Apple. You're going to hear about this. You put it on, it's in a 3-dimension lifestyle, and you can enter any world that's an app on your phone. You can literally go into the fields. You can move it around by moving your eyes, by twisting your fingers, by moving your head, and create an environment that tells you where the olives came from, how they were picked, what percentage of acidity they have, what kind of recipe you would put them in. There's a whole dynamic here that would leverage us to be able to do our work if we were taking advantage of the technology that's available today, which is yet another mega driver when you think about the influence of technology and the work we're doing. Well, I didn't want to leave that off, but here's the question for all of you. As much as Google and as much as Facebook and as much as Twitter and these social apps were the place to go, this tells you the problem. Internet traffic is trending out of these different environments, X, formerly Twitter, and Facebook. The referrals that you're getting a couple of years ago, you would go to right away and pick up your information. Not anymore. Look at the decline in referrals going to other areas to get your information. This is happening, effect is happening, because everybody's got an app. Everybody's involved directly now with their user. Everybody's got the place to go. The problem with that is that you're being directed by the algorithms to constantly tell you where to go. You're not clicking on anything that's new or of interest to you, because everything is coming to you based on the profile that you've built. What are you talking about, Phil? If you like pizza and you're constantly looking at pizza and Italian restaurants and pasta, you're going to miss Mediterranean diet. You're being directed like sheepdogs to one place. So you got to break the algorithm. That's what this is telling us. Back to this mega trend of technology enabling our work. Getting interesting content and the ability to drive consumers to the Mediterranean diet, the effects of Mediterranean diet, Cretan lifestyle, and how all this fits together is what this tells us. And it's not in the basic stuff that we have been using for years. It's starting to evolve. And the answer is in experimentation, and the answer is bringing the pareja together. Where are you going with this, Phil? This pareja thing, the group. Here it is, my friends. The yellow line is when you go out to dinner in restaurants, food away from home. The blue line is what you do at home. You can see over the course of the last couple of years, and you can see what happened in 2020. Guess what? Food away from home. Nobody went out. Why didn't anybody go out? It's a pandemic. Hello, knock, knock. Look what's happened. Everybody started to go out. They came out of the pandemic. They wanted to be together. Even now, today, they're still going out. 114 index over 89. People are not staying home anymore. This is another big signal that the work that we're doing needs to show up in restaurants. It needs to be experimental. It needs to be in groups that come together so they can experiment and understand what is this lifestyle and what does it mean to laugh and drink and eat all at the same time. Now, I know in America, you're not supposed to do that, but that's what we're heading towards. And you got to do that because if you're happy and you're drinking and you're eating good food, you're not lonely. You're not sad. You feel pretty good about yourself and the friends that are around you. And you'll probably get a good night's sleep. God, I wish I was there to see the expressions on your faces. Anyway, you can't forget about the food. Okay? And of course, it's about the food. And this is a chart that talks to you about vegetable oil imports in this country and what's happening with just edible oils, only to show you that there has been some increase across the multiple categories from canola, palm oil, olive oil, you see in gray, and all vegetable oils, which are taking over, of course. And then there's other oils. But you can see there's not any significantly huge, large jump in any one of these categories. You can look at canola, and that seems to be an area that is growing. And you can see how for a while there, palm oil continued to be minimal, and then it jumped a little bit. But again, it had to do with supply chains. The point here is there's tremendous upside and opportunity. You saw in 2020 how many billions of dollars collectively, how the increases came for this particular category, and how the future seems to be available for any manufacturer that wants to get into this business and grow. So it does have something to do about the food, and it does have something to do about making sure you're in the right category and doing the right things. So what's the answer? We've talked about these mega trends. The answer for you as an enterprise is to be agile. VUCA takes care of VUCA. You have to stay true to your vision, V. You have to stay true to understanding what is going on around you. Don't deviate. Don't get caught up with chasing any silver little ball that runs across your environment. Stick true to the things that you're doing and what got you there. Then the clarity of what you're doing and what does that mean and how does it affect you is really important. There's the C. And the most important thing going into 2024, what I like to leave you on, is the agility, the ability to bounce around. It's not black and white. You can get beyond that. Be flexible in your model, but don't get too far away from where your work is as it relates to the things that matter and will keep you active and sustainably profitable in your enterprise. Now, I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't promote IFMA, where you can get some of this information, industry insights, best practices. We can help connect you with buyers. We can help you training and education. If you're coming to the United States, we have an incredible resource library to put you in touch with everybody. And there's all sorts of things we can do together to make your companies and the work you're doing successful. I can't thank you enough for paying attention to me. I hope it went over well. I'm sure Stefano will take the questions. If you like to reach me, you can reach me at phil@ifmaworld.com. I'm more than happy to get in touch with you, answer some questions, and I'm looking forward to being together where we can celebrate the Cretan lifestyle here in America successfully. Kalli σας διασκέδαση, καλή έκθεση, and I wish you nothing but continued success. Have a great time, everybody.